It's 9:33. Now, the Prime Minister has suggested there may be a case for banning some protests following calls for a suspension of pro-Palestinian marches. He was asked if he wanted tougher policing of language used during marches or if he wanted to stop some protests altogether. He said, and I'm quoting now, "I think certainly the first, and I think there are instances for the latter." He also said he would always defend the right to protest, but was concerned about the cumulative effect of repeated marches on the Jewish community. Now, that's something the Jewish community themselves have been talking about for certainly more than a year now. For the record, we need to be very, very careful about banning protest. Ideally, do not ban protest. And it was interesting to hear the head of the Met saying similar this week as well, but talking about looking at some of the larger pro-Palestinian protests and wondering whether they could be made as static protests rather than marches. But we'll see what they come up with and what the response to that is. Let's get a sense of things on this from Chris Nineham, Vice Chair of the StopTheWar Coalition. Good morning to you, Chris.
Morning, Sheila. Thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure. What's your response to this from the Prime Minister?
Well, he says on the one hand that he's a strong defender of freedom of expression, and on the other hand, he says he thinks there is a case for banning some of the protests. So I'd say to him, which one? There is no tradition in this country of protests being banned. I think freedom of expression and freedom of assembly are held to be very valuable and precious principles, and these protests are protests against one of the great kind of disasters of recent times, one of the great scandals of recent times, the obliteration of the Gaza Strip, the absolute catastrophe that has brought about. If there is a move towards banning one of these protests, it is a very serious assault on civil liberties that can presumably be used against anyone if it can be wielded against us.
Had the response from Benjamin Netanyahu's Israel not happened, let's say they took a different route, I know this is a big ask, but would Stop the War have marched against the other catastrophe, the massacre on October the 7th?
Well, our position is that our reason for existence is that we oppose the wars that the West and particularly our government are involved in.
Just the West?
Yes, because we live in the West, and we protest against the Iraq war, against the war in Afghanistan, over Syria, the attack on Libya. That is our purpose. Our purpose is to influence British foreign policy. And in this case, I think one of the reasons why the protests have been so big have been because our government has continued essentially to back Israel and to arm Israel and to give them diplomatic and, broadly speaking, political support. That has to be our focus because we're part of
on that Gazan war specifically, or generally?
Obviously mainly around this particular issue because this is because it has become such an intense, such an absolutely catastrophic set of events. But we've opposed the support of the British government for Israel in the past when Israel has, this isn't the first time they've attacked the Gaza Strip, and obviously the settlements in the West Bank, the whole kind of assault on the Palestinian people is something that we've been opposed to since the inception of the Stop the War Coalition. But it's reached this absolute murderous level in the last 2.5 years, and that's why the protests have been so big and why there's been so many of them.
Do you accept at all that Israel is being attacked?
There obviously is resistance to what Israel has been doing for decades, and
you think all of it, the thousands and thousands of missiles that have been directed to Israel, and only the Iron Dome is what stopped them from landing, not all of them, but most of them from landing. You think that's all resistance? You don't see any part of the Iranian regime's reason for backing that, funding it, using proxies like Hamas and Hezbollah? You don't read the world that way, no?
I don't understand the question exactly.
What I'm saying is, if Iran, which has declared itself against the existence of Israel and wants Israel gone, if Iran is backing Hamas and Hezbollah, and we know that it is, encouraging them to do, not that they need much encouragement, but certainly assisting them in doing what they do, which is to consistently bomb. This isn't to take away from what you have rightly said about the horror that befell the people of Gaza. But the reality is that a large part of that is Iranian-backed, anti-Israel Iranian government tactics to obliterate Israel. Do you accept that or not? You don't have to, obviously, but do you or not?
On the question of what's happening with Iran at the moment, there has been, and it's only in temporary abeyance.
No, I'm asking you, I promise I'll let you talk about... No, hang on, I will let you talk about the Iran war, of course I will. But I'm asking about the 40 years before that as well.
Well, I think one of the problems with the whole discussion and the whole kind of debate around the issues in the Middle East at the moment is that there's a kind of failure to look at the wider picture, at context.
Well, I'm inviting you to.
I know, and I'm about to do that, and context. And the truth of the matter is, and this is why the demonstration on May the 16th is taking place, it's a commemoration of what's called the Nakba, which is in 1948, the time when hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were evicted from their land and thousands were killed at the time of the creation of the Israeli state. And ever since then, with increasing and accelerating intensity, there has been a war against the Palestinian people. This is the fundamental problem.
And do you accept that attempts at peace have been thwarted more by the Palestinian political sort of representations over the years than the Israeli ones, or do you not accept that?
I don't accept that. I mean, the problem is it is a war. That's what people have got to kind of.
And Iran's role in it is what?
Well, I mean, that's a fairly complicated question. But Iran is one of the few countries in the region that has, to a certain extent, defended the Palestinians against this attack, this kind of decades-long campaign to destroy it. And Iran has, up to a point, taken side of the Palestinians, which is something that happens in war. You know, there are allies. Israel has allies, including Britain and including the US.
Can I bring you to something that Keir Starmer? Oh no, go on. Of course.
I mean, and you know, Iran has played to some extent the role of trying to defend the Palestinian people, and that's why it has been, you know, attacked in an unprovoked way by the US recently. And so, you know, you have to see this as a war with the question of Palestinian national rights at its heart. And I think we and the vast majority of people in Britain, actually, if you look at the polls, we do believe in national liberation. We do believe in a people's rights to their own self-determination. And that's what's at the heart of this whole debate, really. And
do you support the Iranian people's right to self-determination? Because I'm conscious that in January and February, tens of thousands of them were murdered on the streets and in hospitals by this regime that has been so generous to the people of Palestine in its support and yet not to its own people. Does the Stop the War Coalition have anything to say about that?
Of course, we defend the rights of like everyone else's rights, the rights of the Iranian people to self-determination.
But do you condemn what happened to them in January and February?
Well, I mean, yeah, I do personally. But the point is this, that there is no way that bombing a country...
Sorry, when you say personally, do you mean your organisation wouldn't? But
well,
you
our organisation doesn't take a position on the domestic politics of any country.
You seem to be taking a position on everything else.
No, we take as I said at the beginning of the interview, what we take a position on is the wars that the government and Western powers have serially been involved in over the last 25 years that have been had such a catastrophic impact on geopolitics. That is what is called Stop the War Coalition.
Can I bring it back to where we began? Can I bring it back? Fair enough. Can I bring it back to where we began on these protests and the potential for them being limited, restricted, or banned? The Prime Minister said this week in Downing Street when he gave that statement the other day, if you say globalise the Intifada, if you shout it at one of these protests or indeed anywhere, you should be prosecuted. You will be prosecuted, he said. If you shout from the river to the sea, there's no debate about what that means. It means remove Israel. It means kill Jews in Israel. If you ignore what the IRGC, the arm of the Iranian government, is clearly doing, using, presumably, Iranian supporters in this country or disaffected Islamist radicalised young men in this country to attack people, Jews and others in this country. What's that if not provocation?
Well, you're conflating two very different things there. On the one hand, you're talking about placards on peace protests. On the other hand, you're talking about the IRGC. So just taking those two things...
both then. Take your time.
I will. The first one on the placards. I mean, the problem here is we're just talking about a misrepresentation of what globalised the Intifada means.
What do you say it means?
Well, I say what the dictionary says it means, which is that the Arabic word Intifada, it means uprising. It means struggle, basically. And what the slogan means when people... And by the way, as anyone who's been on the demonstrations will know, it's not one of the main slogans. It's just something that a handful of people chant or have placards. Would you
ask them not to if you were alongside them?
No, because I don't think there's any problem with the slogan.
Do you accept that in the first Intifada, the term meant to go and kill Jews? Well, I'm chiming in.
You're interrupting me.
No, there's a difference. I've given you plenty of time to speak at length, and I'm happy to continue to do so, but I just want to come in on that. If you know your history, you know that the first Intifada and the exhortation to commit and carry out an Intifada in Israel, it was an exhortation to kill Israelis, Jews.
The Intifada the Intifadas in the Middle East have been campaigns of different kinds, actually, including...
I'm talking about that one, relating to Israel.
What we're talking about there is, we're talking about a campaign against the Israeli state.
It was encouraging terrorist attacks on people. It ended in buses being blown up, pizza houses being blown up, people being stabbed at bus stops. This is not October the 7th. This is the years since that first Intifada. You know what it means. It means an exhortation to kill Jews.
It does not. And
if the law in this country says it does, will your friends still say it?
Well, if the law gets changed, then that's a different situation. We're talking about the situation now.
Well, Keir Starmer says should be prosecuted for hate.
Well, Keir Starmer can say what he wants. I'm interested in the law.
So is he.
Well, maybe. But the point here is that when people use that chant on the demonstrations, and it is, as I say, a minor element of the demonstrations, what they mean is they want to see a campaign of peaceful campaign of protest against what the Israelis are doing. And that's actually around the world. And that's actually what is happening. that in almost every country around the world, the vast majority of people are opposed to what the Israelis are doing, and tens or hundreds of thousands of people are taking to the streets. And that is what this slogan means. That's simply what it means.
Do you accept that it is, you might say unintentionally, I would disagree with that, but that doesn't matter, we can disagree. But do you accept that it is fomented and made space for anti-Semitism in our hospitals, in our universities, in our streets?
No, I don't. And I think,
what caused that? What caused that? Why are Jews being stabbed in the street? Why are they being stabbed in the synagogue in Manchester? Why are their ambulances being burnt? What's caused that, if not exhortations like globalise the Intifada?
Well, I think it's very important that, clearly we have to seriously consider and seriously campaign against and challenge a rise in anti-Semitism. But we're making a very, very big mistake if we connect a campaign against what has happened in the Gaza Strip, against the killing of children, the flattening of hospitals, against that whole disaster that is happening, against the Palestinian people, with a hatred or racism against Jewish people. And let me just say this: our demonstrations are peaceful protests. The police themselves say, with absolutely minimum levels of arrest, with no disorder, that bring together people of all sorts of backgrounds, extremely diverse, including thousands of Jewish people who are campaigning in defence of the Palestinian people. There is no connection between that and targeted attacks on Jewish people.
Chris, I must leave it there, and I'm told you must as well. So thank you very much indeed, Chris Nineham, Vice Chair of the Stop the War Coalition. Gosh, there's a chasm, isn't there, in there? There's no connection. There's a connection, Chris. There's a chasm. And I would say to anybody who goes on those marches, and I know many people, I've got friends who do, go on those marches in good faith and do care deeply about the plight of the Palestinian people. Nothing wrong with that. Look up, read the signs around you, listen to the chants around you, and then ask yourself if there's no connection between that and what happened in Golders Green. It's 9:50. Coming up in